With the presidential election some 40 days away, preliminary hopefuls from the Democratic Party, including Jae-myung, are rolling out their vision for the country. The People Power Party has announced 4 contestants who will advance to the next round of its primary: Kim Moon-soo, An Cheol-soo, Han Dong-hoon, and Hong Jun-pyo. Pope Francis will be laid to rest in a simple tomb outside the Vatican, following a request in his will. People around the world are paying their respects, including here in Korea, where a memorial space was set up in Myeongdong Cathedral. The nation's finance chief, Choi Sang-mok, departed for Washington today for tariff talks with U.S. officials. Other than cooperation in energy and shipbuilding as possible topics, his team is also preparing for unexpected ones too. It's April 22nd, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. Presidential primaries heat up in the nation as the June 3rd election approaches. For the latest, our political correspondent Kim Do-yeon is live on the line. Do-yeon, let's begin with the Democratic Party that appears to have a clear frontrunner.
Jung-min, the frontrunner Lee Jae-myung was, however, forced into a quiet day on the campaign trail as he appeared in court for one of his ongoing criminal trials. Still, he took to social media earlier in the day to highlight his pledges, ranging from cutting carbon emissions and reducing plastic use to pushing forward with changes in the medical system. Tomorrow marks the start of the second half of the regional primaries, starting with the Southwest, covering the Jeollado province and Gwangju City. A liberal stronghold, this region accounts for 27% of the Democratic Party's total electors, more than the 18% combined from the previous 2 voting regions, the Chungcheongdo and Gyeongsangdo provinces. Lee Jae-myung, who has so far secured 90% of the vote, is expected to travel to the region on Thursday. The candidate in second place, Kim Dong-yeon, laid out his development plans for the region today, while third place, Kim Kyung-soo, looking to turn things around, was the first to arrive there.
Let's now turn to the People Power Party. The first round cutoff results are out. Who are advancing to the next round?
Right, Jung-min, PPP's presidential primary is now a 4-way race with Kim Moon-soo, An Cheol-soo, Han Dong-hoon, and Hong Jun-pyo. A 100% open survey among PPP supporters and undecided voters took place from yesterday to 3 p.m. today, and those 4 were the top-scoring candidates among 8. The party says that due to election laws, exact numbers and rankings cannot be disclosed. Except for An Cheol-soo, the rest were expected to make the cut. On survival comes amid the first-round cutoff rule being new in this election. Having no weighted votes for PPP electors, it was aimed at providing a boost to candidates who appeal to undecided voters. And An was in favor of impeaching President Yoon Suk-yeol, as opposed to Na Kyung-won, who was seen as An's rival for the 4th spot. Starting with the second round cutoff, the voting will be comprised of 50% eligible PPP electors and 50% on open survey, giving more weight to PPP members than the open survey.
Our political correspondent Kim Do-yeon, thank you. The Supreme Court on Tuesday started reviewing the election violation case against DP's likely presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung as a full bench. This means the court is taking the case more seriously than others due to the level of public interest. Usually, Supreme Court cases are overseen by 4 justices out of the 13. For this case, however, one of the justices has requested to be recused from the bench as he leads the National Election Commission. Lee faces charges of spreading false information regarding urban development projects ahead of the 2021 presidential election. An initial guilty verdict was overturned on appeal last month. Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok departed for the U.S. today to attend 2+2 trade consultations, set to take place later this week. Other than expected topics, the Korean team is also preparing for unexpected ones too. Our Park Go-nu reports.
South Korea's Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok departed for the U.S. on Tuesday to attend the upcoming 2+2 trade talks with Washington, to address trade and tariff issues.
I will return after paving the way for renewed discussions on strengthening the alliance with the US.
The talks reportedly proposed by the US will be the first high-level trade consultations since the start of Trump's second term and will be held on Thursday local time. Joining Choi are Trade Minister An Dok-kun, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and US Trade Representative Jamison Greer. An is set to depart on Wednesday. Key agenda items are expected to be trade issues following Trump's reciprocal tariffs and bilateral cooperation in energy and shipbuilding. Seoul is also preparing for unexpected topics from the US and accordingly plans to send officials from other ministries, including Foreign Affairs and Agriculture. The government is reportedly preparing for the possibility of Trump joining the talks, as seen in recent negotiations with Japan. Trade Minister An said the agenda items will not cover the FTA or the stationing of US forces in Korea. Acting President Han Duck-soo also on Tuesday expressed hope that the meeting will lead to a win-win solution and mark a meaningful starting point for deeper cooperation between the two countries. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
Pope Francis, who lived a modest life, will be laid to rest in a simple tomb without ornamentation outside the Vatican, as he had wished. People around the world paid their respects to the late pontiff, who was a voice for the poor and marginalized. An Song-jin has more.
Bells tolled in St. Peter's Square, mourning the death of Pope Francis. People from around the world gathered to grieve the Pope, who died at 88 years old from stroke and heart failure. Though he had been hospitalized for 38 days battling pneumonia in the winter, he had delivered an Easter blessing on Sunday morning, the day before his death.
It's just a very sad day. It's honestly, I think, impressive that he made it to Easter. I think that's almost like a miracle for Italy.
He has been doing a great pastoral work, reaching out to his sheep, and, well, now the Lord is calling him to rest in peace after the great work he has done. We are left to pray for him.
In his will, he asked to be buried in a simple tomb in the ground at Rome's Basilica of St. Mary Major, with a one-word inscription, Franciscus, his name in Latin. That will make him the first pope in more than a century to be buried outside the Vatican. World leaders have also spoken about the death of the pontiff. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called Pope Francis a messenger of hope, humility, and humanity, who leaves behind a legacy of faith, service, and compassion. US President Donald Trump signed an executive order to put all flags in the country at half-mast, and further announced that he and the First Lady, Melania Trump, will be making it to the funeral. This will be Trump's first visit to another country since the beginning of his second administration. Russian President Vladimir Putin also expressed his condolences. Pope Francis was beloved by many, and following his death, cardinals will now choose the next pope. An Song-jin, Arirang News.
So the passing of the Pope looks to initiate the procedure of electing a new leader of the Catholic Church. Our Choi Sang-mok walks us through that protocol.
With K. That's the literal meaning of conclave, which comes from the Latin Conclave. In the Catholic Church, the conclave is the secret meeting of cardinals under the age of 80 held to elect a new pope. The meeting takes place 15 to 20 days after the pope's death, leaving enough time for a 9-day mourning period and funeral, with cardinals from around the world arriving in Rome. The current conclave traces its roots back to the 13th century. Traditionally, the Pope is buried 4 to 6 days after his death. The process of electing the 267th Pope begins after the mourning period. For this conclave, 138 cardinals are eligible to elect and to be elected as the new pontiff out of the 252 members of the College of Cardinals. During the conclave, the cardinals are locked inside the Sistine Chapel until the new pontiff is chosen. They cast 4 ballots each day, with a 2/3 majority required to choose the Pope. The cardinals are not allowed contact with the outside world, no phones, no television, and no newspapers. After each vote, the ballots are burned, and the smoke coming from the chapel's chimney is the only signal to the outside world. Black smoke means an inconclusive vote, while white smoke marks the election of a new Pope. Once elected, the bells of the Sistine Chapel ring, and after the chosen candidate accepts the office, an official announcement is made, revealing the new Pope's papal name. Pope Francis, elected on March 13, 2013, was chosen after 5 rounds of voting, just 2 days into the conclave. The senior Cardinal Deacon introduces the newly elected pontiff with the traditional declaration, Habemus Papam, meaning we have a Pope. Following Pope Francis, the first Latin American pontiff, all eyes are now on whether the next Pope, for the first time, could come from Asia or Africa. Jae-myung, Arirang News.
Public mourning for the deceased Pope Francis has begun in the cathedral of the country's capital. The Archdiocese of Seoul announced that starting at 3 p.m. today, the public can pay their respects at Myeongdong Cathedral. A memorial space has been set up in the cathedral's underground chapel. Cardinal Andrew Yeom-soo-jung and Archbishop Peter Jong-sun-taek visited the place of worship to pay their respects, and so did many South Korean Catholics and non-believers alike. South Korea successfully sent its 4th reconnaissance satellite into space on Tuesday morning Korea time. It's to enhance capabilities to monitor North Korea's nuclear and missile threats, regardless of weather conditions. Kim Bo-kyung covers this latest launch.
3, 2, 1, ignition. Engines full power and liftoff. Go Falcon, go Bandwagon 3.
South Korea's 4th military reconnaissance satellite aboard the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket was launched from a U.S. space base, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, at 8:48 p.m. Monday local time, 9:48 a.m. Tuesday Korea time. 50 minutes after liftoff, the reconnaissance satellite was placed into orbit, and it successfully communicated with the ground station at 12:27 p.m. Korea time, indicating the satellite's normal operation.
The 4th spy satellite launched from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station successfully separated from the launch vehicle, entered its orbit, and successfully communicated with a domestic ground station, confirming that the satellite is in good working order.
The satellite launched this time was the 3rd synthetic aperture radar satellite, part of South Korea's plan to deploy 5 reconnaissance satellites by the end of this year under the 425 project. Aiming to enhance surveillance of North Korean military activities, South Korea launched its first reconnaissance satellite in December 2023, equipped with electro-optical and infrared sensors capable of capturing detailed images. 2 satellites with SAR sensors, which enable the collection of data regardless of weather conditions, were launched last year in April and December. South Korean military is aiming to send the last one within this year, and once completed, Seoul will be able to monitor North Korea at 2-hour intervals. The country is to deploy dozens of ultra-small satellites by the early 2030s, which is expected to further reduce that interval.
Our surveillance over North Korea would be much strengthened, and after launching ultra-small satellites as well, this will mark a very important step towards self-reliant national defense, as it will significantly reduce our dependence on the US for intelligence capabilities.
While bolstering the core assets that form the foundation of Korea's 3-axis defense system, South Korea is aiming to pave the way to emerge as a strong space power in national defense. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Elsewhere, Russian President Vladimir Putin has signaled that he is open to direct talks with Ukraine for the first time since the full-scale war began more than 3 years ago. During an interview with Russian state TV on Monday, Putin said Russia has always looked positively on any peace initiatives, adding that he hopes that representatives of Kyiv will feel the same way. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said the president had in mind negotiations with the Ukrainian side. Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky did not directly respond to Putin's comments, but said in his nightly video address on the same day that Ukraine is ready for any conversation that would ensure the safety of civilians. Wall Street ended sharply lower on Monday in response to crude comments by President Donald Trump, directed at the head of the U.S. Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, pressuring him to lower interest rates. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Wall Street stumbled to a close on the week's first trading session on Monday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 971.82 points, or 2.48%, to close at 38,170.41. The S&P 500 shed 2.36%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq fell 2.55% to settle at 15,870.90. The so-called Magnificent Seven tech giants all dragged the major indexes lower, with Tesla losing 5.8%, while Nvidia shed more than 4%. Wall Street saw U.S. stocks tumble and bonds sold off as U.S. President Donald Trump threw fresh criticism toward U.S. Fed Chair Jerome Powell on Monday, pressuring him to cut interest rates. Taken to social media, Trump said the economy would slow unless Powell, who he called Mr. Too Late, a major loser, lowers interest rates immediately. Trump had previously called for the U.S. Fed to lower rates, even hinting at Powell's possible termination. The lack of progress on global trade after Trump announced his reciprocal tariffs earlier this month has also dented investor confidence. Since Trump's announcement on April 2nd, the S&P 500 is down 9%, and both the Nasdaq and Dow Jones fell nearly 10%. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Disasters are something we must always be prepared for, as safety matters to all. And with a growing number of foreign people in Korea, the authorities turn their eyes to ensuring them better access to information in times of emergency, who may struggle due to language barrier. Shin Ha-young tells us more.
South Korea is no exception to the growing disaster risks caused by various factors such as climate change and urbanization. Already this year, the country experienced one of the worst wildfires in its history in the southeastern region, and an earthquake struck the central city of Chungju. But not everyone can equally respond to disasters. According to the Justice Ministry, the number of foreigners living in South Korea has been growing annually, with over 2.6 million living in Korea as of last year. However, they are especially vulnerable to disaster-related risks due to language barriers and cultural differences. To address this issue, the Ministry of the Interior and Safety held on Tuesday the 8th annual policy session on disaster and safety management for diplomatic missions to Korea, bringing around 100 participants from 63 embassies.
Apart from disaster management for Korean people, you also thinking about foreigners living in Korea. That's very good gesture from Korean government. And we have had a lot of cooperations between Korea government and with Laos too, including with ASEAN member states.
The session addressed a range of topics, including Korea's comprehensive disaster and safety management system and the effectiveness of disaster alerts and emergency text messaging. One way for foreigners to receive emergency alerts is through the Emergency Ready app operated by the ministry.
A foreign resident can receive the emergency messages in their native languages because of the technical limitation of cell phone technology. So we developed an app which is called Emergency Ready app.
The app offers a multitude of emergency services, including alerts, safety guides, and information on the locations of civil defense shelters in 5 languages. The ministry plans to expand the service to 19 languages by August. During the session, improvements in the country's disaster management were also discussed.
As I said, in Belgium we don't have anything like this, so already much appreciated. But of course, there's always room for improvement. First of all is limit the emergency alerts. It's repeated a lot of times, every day.
Regarding such an issue, the ministry said it is testing a system to cut down on repetitive or similar emergency alerts, aiming to implement it as early as the second half of this year. 신하영, Arirang News.
A Korean animation based on the Bible debuted at #2 at the U.S. box office and globally raked in millions of dollars on its opening weekend. Lee Eun-jin explains what's special about it.
The animated film The King of Kings, created and produced by Korean studios and filmmakers, debuted at #2 in the North American box office. With its Korean title translating to The Life of Jesus, this marks a milestone for a Korean animation on the global stage. According to the U.S. tracking site Box Office Mojo, The King of Kings raked in $7.01 million across 3,200 theaters in North America on its opening day on April 12th. The film's opening weekend earnings surpassed $19.4 million globally, making it the largest debut for an animated biblical movie since 1998's The Prince of Egypt, and continued its success over the Easter weekend, bringing in $17.2 million.
From the beginning, we targeted the North American market as our main target audience. The US is a country founded by Puritans, and although it is not the same as it used to be, it is still a country with a strong Christian cultural tradition. So we were confident that this theme would resonate with audiences. That said, the success has been far greater than we anticipated, leaving us feel a bit overwhelmed.
The story of the life of Jesus is well known, but it had never been made into a feature-length animated film for the theater. Written and directed by Mofax Studios CEO Jang Sung-ho, who was inspired by Charles Dickens's book The Life of Our Lord, and tells the story of a father taking his youngest son on a journey through time to restore their relationship. To this fresh approach, Jang added extraordinary computer graphics and visual effects. Director Jang endured a decade of rejections for investments to bring this film to theaters. But it is now set to make its way around the world, with anticipation high for its release in South American theaters before it comes to Korea at the end of July. Lee Eun-jin, Arirang News.
Strong rain has been falling across the country all day today. In inland areas, heavy rain of 5 to 50 millimeters per hour has been pouring. On the south coast, there are also strong winds along with thunder and lightning. In most areas, 5 to 30 millimeters of rain is expected through the day. This rain is accompanied by gusty winds. With a strong wind advisory in place on the south coast, winds of up to 20 to 25 meters per second will blow in the mountainous areas and coastal areas, 50 meters per second in the rest of the country. Most of it will stop late tonight, but on the east coast, rain will continue until tomorrow morning. Morning will start mild with Seoul and Jeju at 13 degrees Celsius, Gwangju at 16 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 24 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 19 degrees in Busan and Jeju. The temperatures will drop a bit from Friday morning, with the temperature in Seoul falling to 7 degrees Celsius. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.